we will definitely not shut up and dribble.
The champ is here. I must be the greatest. The champ is here.
I'm going to continue to stand with the people.
The champ is here.
I will not lose.
I'm a bad man. I took up the world.
Yes, welcome. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with we. My name is EJ, and I got my man,
MH.
Yes, he's a DB of the show. We are Black in Sports, giving a voice to the culture that won't shut up and dribble. Here talking about the things in and around the game of sports. So we're bringing you back in the locker room. You ready to do this, MH?
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Today, inside the locker room, we're going to talk about how to live my life on purpose. So we got the 8 steps of becoming. You know, we had a guest that kind of giving us this. So how you want to start it out, MH?
Yeah. So here's the book right here.
Mm-hmm.
How to Live My Life on Purpose. This was a book authored and wrote by one of our guests, Bishop Geoffrey Dudley. He was on season 1, episode 39. And it's a book, obviously, about purpose and what God's purpose is for us. But it's a book that can apply to anyone's walk of life. Whether that's in sports business, whether that's being an athlete, whether that's a former athlete, whether that's just being a person with a job, or being a grown adult. What is your purpose in life? And I think that's always a question that us, as we get older and mature in life, we always kind of ask, am I doing what my purpose here? If I'm doing what I'm truly, sit on this earth to do. And I think this is a book that helps have 8 steps that kind of guides you to what that purpose is in your life.
And, Bishop is definitely heavily in sports. I mean, he played it. He was on the show and just talked about the different correlations in his life going through. So, like we do in Black in Sports, man, we look at all different topics from all different aspects. And, we're going to, do some correlation between, what this book meant for us and maybe just highlight a couple chapters because, we don't want to give it all away once you still go out there with the book. Yeah, man, let's start it off with chapter 1. Man. What was your, thoughts right offhand with chapter 1?
Yeah, so the title of chapter 1 is God's Plan for My Purpose.
God's plan.
Yeah.
God's plan. Hey.
And I think the key word in that title obviously is plan.
Mm-hmm.
Before you go out to kind of do something, anything in life. As a former coach, I always think that when you think about football, you're doing a lot more planning and a lot more scheming than you are actually playing, right? And so for those moments when you do play to be beneficial, the plan is very important to what you're doing. And I think that for me, that kind of made me think about a little bit about what Deion Sanders is doing at Jackson State and for HBCUs, and how we touched on, he just had his first season, really a spring season.
Right.
And he kind of touched on, obviously there's a narrative out there that, HBCU athletes are below the Power 5 to some degree.
But talked about that on the athlete.
Yeah, I am athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he addressed his plan is to change all that. And it seemed like he had very strategic and very intentional ways of changing that narrative and what this plan is.
Right.
That was my immediate thoughts. What's kind of your thoughts with it?
No, I mean, staying in the line of that, right? So it's God's plan. I think what was big for me is that it talked about, there was a quote or a stat in the book where he said, the average age is 79, right? So we'll live to, the average age, most of us live, hopefully, God willing, to that age. And then through that time frame, you come across 80,000 people, you touch 80,000 people. So having that, natural connection or touching people just by living, how are you living in God's plan and in your purpose to touch those people? And so I think that Deion is really taking the most of that, right? Because he touched us even when he was getting money, it must be the money. He was touching us, right? Like his swag when he played at Florida State drew me, and I knew definitely to you right? Being a DB watching him. So he was doing all those things, developing that story and that message to who knew he was going to be now shepherding, this flock of these sheep, in these HBCUs and just bringing light to it. And so much so, not only is he touching those kids at the school, he's touching the whole HBCU, I guess, family or organization, right? Because now you see a couple other coaches stepping up, saying, "Hey, I want to go to HBCU now." Eddie George, I think, and there's going to be many more, right? But those are of recent. So I think that was the thing that touched me, was just seeing how he, in the book, it talks about how many people we come through in a lifetime, and if we're intentional, with our plan, and God puts, that plan together for us to kind of, reach our ultimate potential.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you touch on, the amount of people in 79 years. Obviously, that's time.
Right.
So
right.
The word plan is not, quick, fast, and a hurry. I know we live in a pretty instantaneous society.
Right.
But the word plan, although it's 4 letters, it's kind of long standing, right? So yeah, that's big.
And then the other thing, and it's funny reading it and, knowing Bishop, he still puts his, he puts his jokes in there. So
For sure.
when you talk about plan, right? It's not A to B. I mean, it may be A to B, but it has some wiggly. He's like, don't mind those extra steps in your plan, because you and God know you both need to exercise.
Right.
So that tickled me, because I just think about when we're in a men's thing on Saturday, he always busts those little side jokes in there. It was good to kind of, see that humor in there. One of the other things that stuck out to me, and we're still in chapter 1, man, so he started off amazing, was just how he says you have to go through something before God lets you shine. And that's part of, the whole kind of going up and down and through the path. And if we were to kind of talk about maybe some of the people that went through something, I would talk about maybe even Byron Allen, right? So he's big and doing all these things for Black media. He's suing these big companies and shaking them hey, we uncracked the code. You're giving to diverse media companies, but you're not giving to Black-owned media companies, right? And, he went through this court case and lost and, went to appeals. And, he's just going through all this adversity, in hopes and an effort to help Black media such as ourselves. So.
Yeah, you're right, man. I mean, we'll probably touch on her a little later, but, Naomi has kind of reached the pinnacle of, her sports and women tennis, beating Serena and, kind of being thrust into being the person to the next to carry that mantle.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. We'll definitely get in there when we talk about one of the chapters.
Yeah.
Was there anything else? I mean, and just in the HBU space, it may not be athletes, but just what people are doing. So Jeff Bezos' wife, right?
Yeah.
She broke bread. She married him, got broke off, and was like, hey, this wasn't my plan, but hey, let me break bread.
Yeah.
Last question I want to ask about before we move on to the next chapter is one of the things he brought up in it was kind of like it's almost a workbook as well. It has devotions and next steps and things to make you kind of reflect in the book. And he was talking about a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. What's your thoughts on that? And do you have a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan?
Yeah, I think it's important because you kind of have to be pushing for something in a way. It helps you stay focused. It helps you not get sidetracked. And obviously, to your point, there are different layers, but I think it's very important to do that, especially like I said, we touched on earlier in this society where it's instantaneous. You can kind of get, wish-washed all, out of whack, really.
Right.
And not to get, obviously we're talking about, relationship with God, and, you can pray to whoever you want to pray to, but I think it's always important also that there's a leader that you have, somebody that's higher than you, that's helping you come up with your plan. Because we all make mistakes of where we're at. It's always good to look at somebody that, whether that be an elder or older person, They still have negatives because they have been through that, but they can help you develop what your 1 to 3 year, 5-year plan. And I do have some. I always kind of break it down into kind of a spiritual and obviously career wise, and then in personal. My life has changed recently with having a child and being married and becoming a leader of a household, and so since that way, there has to be a plan there because I can't lead without a plan, right? So yes, and I actually write them down now.
That's
we have
a big part right there. That's awesome.
Yeah. My wife and I have a kind of an exercise where we don't really do New Year's resolutions, but we try to put our goals and our plans to paper, put them on somewhere where we can see it every morning. And during these long months of June where it's 110,000 degrees there in Vegas already.
Right.
It's important to understand what your plan and purpose is for the year and moving forward.
Facts. All right. Jumping into, and like you said, we just really pick and chose just a couple of chapters because, we went to the book. But I'll open up the next chapter. It was Praise on Purpose, chapter 6, right?
Chapter 6.
Praising on Purpose. I think the biggest thing that jumped out to me was the no fear. It says we're not supposed to live in any fear, and I think for me, related to sports, someone that sticks out to me of no fear is Dak.
Yeah,
I mean, Dak Prescott has, going back to chapter 1, facing adversity, right? Losing his mother and his brother, right?
Yeah.
Holding out on a contract where, he bet on himself, then getting injured when he was putting it all on the line, and then just still believing in himself, saying like, no, I am the future. This is my death. This is what I'm supposed to be here for. I believe in that. And, he didn't have fear. And, he's hopefully going to come out on top. I hope he has a great season. I hope he doesn't get that money.
Of course he will. He's a Cowboy. Come on now.
And I know Bishop's going to agree with you because he's a Cowboy fan. So
right.
This is double trouble. But
he said he's not intimate with the Cowboys, though.
That's what, his exact words. He's not getting that intimate time with them, I guess.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that stuck out for me. What about you?
Yeah, there was kind of a section in the chapter. It was called the Power of Purpose Praise. And kind of touching back on chapter 1, what we touched on, was kind of like the adversity, and knowing that it's important to praise and be thankful for where you're at in the moment. And when I think of it and I tie it back to an athlete, I think of Derrick Rose, because shout out to the Knicks, season over, but
yeah, you okay, man?
Yeah, man, they got bounced out tonight. But
this is your thug tears and pour out a little liquor for them.
Yeah, it's a foundation. It's a foundation where we're trying to go. We got a plan, right? We got a plan. we got a plan.
Okay.
But one thing about Derrick Rose, obviously Derrick Rose is the youngest MVP in NBA history,
right?
And obviously we know that he's went through injuries and knee injuries to both knees and being up and down and having a fade and
come back from
correct and some personal things and having that large Adidas deal and then not really the face of Adidas anymore. There's a lot going on,
right?
But one thing that he always talks about, and I think he had an Instagram post of how he's kind of changed his game, and to me that made me think that hey, he's praising and he's thankful for where he's at, even through the process. And he's not looking at the end. He's not looking at the past. Like, this is what I was. He's like, this is where I am now. And I'm thankful to be here. And he's still doing his thing at a very high level. So that's kind of who I thought.
So sticking around the New York area.
Yeah, I don't know if I like the rotation of your hair right there.
So KD, right?
Yeah.
He had no fear. And maybe the New Jersey Nets fans are praising him for choosing the Nets and having Kyrie come over. I mean, that was because it's the Mecca, right? Like, why would you not choose? Like, for him to not choose the Mecca and go to the Nets, it's like. And I saw you get paused because you thought I was calling the Nets the Mecca.
Yeah. Okay.
And you got like, your chest kind of puffed up a little bit.
Yeah, I just make sure I hear you. These headphones sometimes get the echo or something. Yeah.
Reverberation or something like that, right? No, I said the Mecca. Okay. But no, for him to not choose that, right? Like when you was talking about New York, everybody assumed and thought the Knicks, and he pulled a switcheroo and him and Kyrie. I mean, Kyrie. Oh, so there was another point, right? Staying on that same vein. It talked about different ways of praising. I think I enjoyed that as well because it's not always just what people do on Sunday. It's that relationship that you have throughout the week, listening to devotionals, liquid prayers, right? I tell people all the time, they say they've cried, like when my mom passed, I've shed some liquid prayers.
Sure.
Dancing, shouting, and just however you can build that relationship and praise. I think you do that. And Kyrie is definitely doing some different praising because he's just in a different light in a different world, man. He's not to say the N word. He's saging the court before he goes, so he's looking to be in an intentional, praiseworthy place in his life.
We can definitely say that.
You got any more thoughts on that one?
Nah, good with that one, man. That's good stuff.
So jump into, and like I said, we picked out a couple chapters, so there was 8 total steps, right? So the 8 steps were comprised in 8 different chapters. And like we said, there's great devotionals. There's also additional scriptures and quotes in there. I forgot Jeremiah 29:11 started off the first one. So that was one of my favorite scriptures. But chapter 7, my perspective. All right. So this one, we really get a lot of kind of talk behind that, right? Because athletes often and people in sports have their perspective. So what jumped out for you in this chapter? And, let's talk about it.
Yeah, man. Be you. Man, that is 2 words, but so powerful.
100%.
I loved it. And where he tied it back to the story in the Bible was David and Goliath, and how David was going to fight Goliath, and they was like, all right, cool, man, we're gonna put this, you got to get the eye patch on, we're gonna put this nice heavy helmet on, make sure your boots is tight. Yeah, and he's like, bro, I can't get loose in all this.
And he's like, no, take these 5 rocks, these pebbles.
Go ahead, give me this smooth stone and this slingshot that's made out the back. But at a young age, David understand who he was, and he knew that being somebody else wasn't him. And touching on Kyrie, what you just touched on, though I may not agree with all he's doing, at the end of the day, he's being who he is, and he's being true to him, and he's not letting the media or our opinion or really anybody's opinion of him change who he is.
Right.
And I think there has to be, I'm sure, somewhat of a freedom mentally for him that probably allows him to be better at his sport because he just truly knows who he is and he's not trying to do anything outside of himself.
No, absolutely. There has to be a freedom and comfort in that. And, it takes a while for, people to get to that space. And because there's a lot of adversity to get to that space, there are fears to get to that space, right? Like, depending on what stage you are in life, sometimes you're not afforded that piece to do that. Like you can, but it becomes at a risk. And then that's where you have to be super comfortable and know that like God's got you, right?
For sure.
No, the BU really stuck out to me, and it brought up a book that I read back in the days by Russell Simmons. So Uncle Russ put out a book called Do You, and it was saying kind of like 12 principles, same like Bishop's book where it gives like 12 steps or 8. This one's 8. This is like 12 of happiness. So he's a yogi, but he's a businessman and things like that. So it was a quick, easy read, but I definitely think it's just applying around the same things of setting your goals, doing the things that you need to do to get to where you want to be as far as personal happiness, personal growth, and as well as financial and business success. So that's a little plug for you. Do you? by Russell Simmons. It was a dope book.
I love it, man. I love it. I think another, athlete that comes to mind when it comes to kind of just being you is Russell Westbrook. And I said I would laugh. He has a little slogan that says, "Why not?" Right. So
that's his foundation too, right?
Yeah, that's his foundation. I think that's what he even calls his shoes. Why not?
Really? Why not? Okay.
0.2 or whatever. So that's like him. And he always kind of claims like, why not him? Why not you? Why can't I be great?
Yep.
Why not I? Why can't I do it?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a positive, thinking thing kind of thing. It reminded me of a book by Bobby Knight where he said it was the power of negative thinking, right?
Okay.
And it was basically saying, be you. Hey, if you're not in a basketball sense, hey, Shaq, if you're not a three-point shooter, we don't need you out there taking more than 3 dribbles to shoot threes. We need you to get your big body in the paint, right?
Right.
Yeah, understand who you are. Understand how your bread gets buttered and being you. And I think that is a powerful statement. Oftentimes we kind of get toward, sidetracked.
Right.
If we don't really understand who we are. And I think that's a very vital piece in your purpose.
All right, stick with me on this one. I'm about to do a windy road on this one. So
let me sit up.
And this is part of the prep notes that you had, and then like when I was reading over, and I was like, okay, let's do this. So one of the things Bishop talks about is that everybody. Well, let's start with this. The chapter had some geographical history put into it, right?
100%.
And one of the things it says, like, hey, everybody's from Africa. That's the origin, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all from Africa of that descent. And so tying it back to maybe we'll call him an athlete is J. Cole. who played in the African basketball. You like that? You like that right there?
I like how you did that.
And he had a combination, and I think that ties in both themes that came in this chapter, right? Yeah, he played, that was the league he played on, but he knew who he was. He fought fear and he went after it. And that was because we did a show on it about him going to the league and after he dropped his shoe and everything, and he made it happen, man. So did you watch any of the games or see him play at all?
Absolutely not. I think after 2 to 3 games, he probably found out that this is not my purpose, right? Go. His new album is tough, but that's your purpose.
That's how you connect to your 80,000 people, right?
That's your connection. That's your connection. Yeah, no.
So maybe like Bishop said, those were his extra steps he was taking along his path.
He got sidetracked. Yeah.
And sometimes you just need to be reminded, right? You got to step out. And
he was reminded quick with some of them jump shots.
That's funny. I think another thing that was dope is in the chapter, he talked about God will always unite people around a common purpose for changing lives, right? And I know a lot of people do it, but I want to shine light on the WNBA, on kind of what they've done. I mean, hell, they flipped the whole state, as far as in the, the party race. And then if you look at their document that the documentary they had, the 144, everything that they pushed, they really wanted to say, no, what do we want to do? Not what the league wants us to do or what the NBA is doing. What do we want to do when we make these decisions? And they were talking about the lockout and how they show up and their shirts. And they've always been really progressive and pushing forward. So, I'd love to see their shine. Shout out to the 25th, anniversary of their season. But they are someone that I think did a combination of pulling together for a common purpose to change lives, but also being you and doing you in your purpose.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. And kind of in that same vein a little bit. Naomi Osaka, Kyler Murray, Jordan Clarkson, they're doing a little series with, I think it's Nike.
Okay.
But they were talking about, obviously, their Asian excuse me, their Asian and African American and Black side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all three of them, have some Asian descent and Black descent, obviously.
Right.
But I think what was cool about that talk with all of them is that they're representing both of who they are, right? And, they understand, their complete self. They understand that the platform that they are on, they understand that they are, kind of representation for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And for them to take on that responsibility, understand that responsibility,
right,
and move to being changed, use it for good, I think is huge. And a shout out to them for doing that.
Absolutely. And definitely shout out for what Naomi is kind of going through right now, standing up for herself. I think it's Mental Awareness Month coming up. At least I know there's actually minority or Black mental health coming up in June or July or something like that. Either way, she's being courageous. She got fined. They always want to call you out when you step outside of the box that they want to put you in. So I'm glad that Venus Serena, just a lot of the culture and people are supporting us. So, we definitely want to just send our support out to her too, because it's all good when you're out there, dribbling and, it's almost a shut up and dribble. Like it's shut up and play. Like we don't care about your health type thing. So it's kudos to her, doing what she needs to do. And I'm happy Nike, voiced that they want to stand by her. So that's always good too, because a lot of things that they have to make these decisions affect their money. So, it's good that that's in a good standing.
100%.
Anything else for the people, man?
Nah, it's been good.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely put some of the details of the book for our guests moving forward in season 2. Man, we want to support you guys and all the endeavors that you guys have in all of your paths and career paths. So we'll be providing a book to our guests that they can also apply to their plan and purpose. And I know, EJ, you want to do some special things for our listeners as well.
Yeah, so look, we'll figure out something on social media. We'll put together something. We have a couple books. We definitely want to get this out to our listeners. So we just need to figure out some way to, make sure that they listen and people that really want the book and get it out to them. So we'll come up with something. So stay tuned, check out our social media, and we'll get that out there, man. You got anything else, MH?
All good, man.
All right, man. Well, we want to thank everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, we're here to bring you the great content in and around sports. And you got to have a plan. You have to have a purpose. So continue to check us out. We drop every Thursday exclusively here. You can hear us anywhere they play podcasts. All right. And just know, practice gratitude, stay safe, and we're rooting for you.
Screaming, all us blacks got is sports and entertainment until we even.
Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Look. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Spent about 2 racks on handmade new rags. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. That's everybody from sports to college class to rap and back.